So what I'm going to do, you can come on in. I'm going to start, since we have a lot of material to cover, and originally this presentation was 4 hours, and I've condensed it down into 2, so it's more, I guess it's more actually attend this. I know that they don't have to spend half a day, but there's some valuable information here, so if you do have any questions for me, I would ask that you, come on in. I would ask that you just simply, my email is going to be shown at the end. You can email me or you can pull me aside later on if you do happen to have any questions. I would ask if you could also please silence any cell phones that you may have on, just so I'm going to do my own as well. If you have to take a call or anything else, please feel free to go ahead and do that, or to use the restroom. Not you though, not right now.
No, just go drink water so I can use it
Okay,
later.
I suppose that's all right. And through the presentation, I will be giving you some examples. I'm not trying to turn anybody into Jason Bourne. This is not that presentation. This is going to tap into something that we already do as people that live in this current civilization, right? If you have to take a test, you prepare for it. If you are taking a vacation, you prepare for it, right? Anything that we do, people in sports, if you have to play a game, we prepare for it, we practice it. This is what I'm going to show you today, that if that event does happen, and it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be directly here at this school. It could be if you're out someplace, if you're at a restaurant, if you're at a store. These are some of these. These are the items that you can use in any type of scenario. Now, when I was a police trainer, I used to tell the guys, I can't provide you with every scenario that you might encounter. But what I am going to do is give you that baseline on how to react. Right? So, depending on what the situation of the scenario is, you have your priority, right? Your safety is paramount, and your safety is your responsibility. And I will show, as we go through the presentation, I'm going to show you how that responsibility is going to fall to you in those precious couple of minutes before police arrive. Okay? So this presentation, this CRASE presentation, I'm not here to discuss the why. I don't know why people do this. I don't have an answer for it. We could sit here and we could talk for years and years and years, which has been going on, and no one can really provide the why. Why does this happen? We don't know. There's several different things that usually are in place, but it lies with the individual as to the why. We're going to discuss what we can do, how we can do it, and how we can survive these critical incidents. And I'm probably going to repeat a lot of what I just said. Okay, these are just some of the sponsors that took part when this was originally brought up. So as you can see, a lot of people, a lot of partner agencies have gone into developing this program and this course. Primarily, you will see, this is the ALERT program, which started out of Texas State. So the ALERT program started in 2002, as you can see. Now, this was to show responding officers how to respond to active shooters, or active attackers, as the definitions and the terminology has changed. After every critical incident or event that we have, the law enforcement community learns on how to do things differently. What can we do better? There's always things that we can do better, so we ask questions. This was really born out of the incident in Columbine, where the tactics back then were to develop an inner perimeter, and I'm going to use a lot of terminology, police-related, an inner perimeter, which is securing the school doors, the outer perimeter, just in case somebody slipped through the inner perimeter, and we would wait for a SWAT team to show up. Okay? So after that occurred, we saw that after a review of all that, we saw that this was a huge mistake, right? That police needed to get inside the building as soon as possible. And this is what developed from the Texas State University. They had the alert program in 2002, a rapid response. And as an instructor, you bring in officers and you show them how you're going to respond to things. And if you go to the sound of gunfire, you're going to have team movements, how to clear a room, how to enter a room, and what you need to do during and after this event. And if you all didn't realize that there's a camera right there, so we're being taped so other people can watch this. No, it's going to catch the back of somebody's head, but I think it's primarily on me, which is frightening in and of itself, but I will get through it. So, an easy to remember method is avoid, deny, and defend. We'll be talking about this, and we'll break it down. We're going to crawl, we're going to walk, and then we're going to run. We'll talk about this a little bit more. So after the development of that alert program for police officers, we had concerned citizens going, before you get there, what can we do so we can survive one of these critical incidents? So the CRASE was developed in 2004. It's a simple strategy. It's easy to remember, and it's dependent and incumbent upon you to think before you have to act. Like I said before, sports, people practice before they play the game. Before you go on a trip, you prepare for that trip, right? Before you have to take a test, you study for that test. You don't just go in cold and take it because you're not going to do well. This is going to give you some strategies should we have a critical incident or an active attack here on campus or anywhere. Okay, so some sensitive issues are going to be coming. We're talking about this is adult. This is the real world where situations do happen. As we just saw what happened in Maine, it happens. It's around the country. So some sensitive issues will be covered. You're not going to see anything that's graphic or gruesome. We all know what goes on. We don't need to see it, but you need to know about it. So some sensitive issues will be covered. If you need to step out of the room, please do so. Come back once you're ready. Because we're gonna carry on, right? I see things through a different lens after close to 30 years of law enforcement. I've seen things that are differently. So again, my lens is going to be different than your lens, and I understand that. Again, we'll talk about some active attack events, disaster response, and psychology, and the civilian response to active attack events. A little bit about me. I went to this, I was in the Marine Corps, and then I went to this school and graduated in 1993. Then I went to UMass Lowell. From there, I spent 6 years with the Maine State Police as a state trooper. I worked in Portsmouth, the city of, as a police officer for 21 years. During my time there, I was a patrol officer. I was the training officer, and when I left, I was a detective. And I find myself back to where my law enforcement career began. I was first exposed to the CRASE program when I was the training officer, because I went to the alert program, and then I sat in and became an instructor for the CRASE. Because I found it very valuable. Very valuable. In the military and in law enforcement, we just don't grab the equipment that we have and go out and work. We have to go through training. We have to have repetition so we know how to respond. This is what this is. This is going to start you, right? When I say crawl, walk, run, this is going to give you that first step on what you need to do. Active attack events. By definition, an active attack event is attempted mass murder. It is somebody who is going into a confined space or a space with the strict purpose of trying to kill innocent people, right? That is what it is. It's an active attack event. It's an attempted mass murder. Now, what is our responsibility as civilians is to prevent that from happening. I am not going to be a victim. I am not going to allow this person to use me to make some type of statement. The attacker. There's no profile on these attackers. It comes from every age. It comes from every ethnicity. It spans a lot of different genres. So there's no profile. We can't specifically say, if you've seen the FBI movies where they have a profiler come in about somebody, oh, he's this, he's this, he's this. Can't do that with someone who's an active attacker. Again, it's all in the mind of the individual. When they choose to act on something. Sorry, I keep walking this way.
No, are you okay if I step this way so I can see better?
No, you know what? I'm going to make a conscious decision to.
No, that's
I'm
going to move this way so I can see the...
So there's no profile. They have an Avenger mindset. What's an Avenger mindset? There is a wrong or a perceived wrong, whether it's for the individual or it's for a group of people that they think they represent. So they have that Avenger mindset. I'm going to set this straight. I'm going to show people. I'm going to do this, and this will show them. So there's that Avenger mindset. It is planned. Much like anything that is an operation, whether it's in the military, law enforcement, or here, when you're organizing anything, you plan. They plan for up to 2 years. It may be longer before they decide to act. So it's planned. Some will broadcast their intentions. In this day of social media, you have a lot of people that put a lot of different things out there. And so many that it's hard to kind of keep track. And for law enforcement to follow up on all of them, it's almost impossible. As we just saw, there was an incident in Portsmouth where I used to work. There was a young man who decided that he was going to put on, I don't know if it was Instagram or Snapchat. He was parked in front of the Portsmouth High School, right in front of the sign, showing a gun, right, broadcasting their intentions. Now I think he's going to spend some time in a federal prison, which he should. And we all know about what happened in Lewiston. Did he broadcast some of his intentions? He absolutely did. Because we had some different agencies contacting other agencies to go check up on him to see what was going on with him. So broadcast their intentions. Some risk factors that are involved with these people that perpetrate these acts of violence. There's a history of violence. How did they grow up? Did they grow up in an area where violence was an everyday occurrence and they had to participate in that violence to survive? It's absolutely possible. We have an exposure to violence that also in the family. If you have a father or parents that use violence to discipline children or to enforce household rules, well, that's going to become the norm. Like I said, people see things in different lenses, and if they're seeing a lens where violence is acceptable and it's how you get things done, that's how they're going to do things. Substance abuse and dependence, again, coupled with a history of violence. I can't say it's one thing that necessarily forces these people or makes these people act this way, but I want to say it's a mixture of things. Substance abuse, we have mental illness and or disorders. If it's something that's undiagnosed or maybe it's diagnosed and they have not, they've got to a point where they feel better and they stop taking the prescribed medication and then they slip back into their illness or disorder. History of suicidality, stalking, harassing, or threatening behavior. For some people, it's a slow build, right? They will start here and then they'll increase their behavior. They get a little more erratic and a little more irrational. Negative family dynamics and support system. They grew up in that type of family and their family is still like that, right? So if they're looking for support from their family, they're not getting it. And when they don't get it, they're going to seek out their own way to resolve it. Isolation or instability. A lot of these people, they start acting a certain way, and people around them will start to drift away from them. It's naturally occurring because they feel like something bad is going to happen, or they just don't want to be around the negative attitude or the behavior, so they'll separate themselves from it. So then these people become isolated. When they become isolated, they get a little bit further down into the wormhole of their own thoughts to where they think this type of behavior is acceptable. And if I'm going too fast, I apologize. So now, most of the statistics that I have here was from an FBI study that was from 2000 to 2020. And so you're gonna see there's a lot of, we know about current active attack events that have happened. You're not going to see them on here, but the numbers are pretty consistent. They're pretty comparable to what's been going on for the past 5 or 6 years. So as you can see, our little key here The larger circles represent 4+ victims for gun. We also have knives that are used and vehicles. And you can see, as this moves along, when I'm in 2006, as this moves along, there's not one particular part of the country that is immune to it. This is happening everywhere. Some places you won't hear about it because it's happening in a town in Idaho that we've never heard of. We don't watch the local news, and it doesn't make CNN or Fox News or any regional news, national broadcast. And as soon as you hear about one of these active attack events, it's in the news cycle for a little bit, and then something else occurs. So then we keep regenerating the news cycle here. So again, just to kind of illustrate, it's not one particular part of the country where all this is happening. It's nationwide, right? And it's still happening today. You can add probably another 200 events to that, if not more. Location of the attacks. Depending on the number of victims or the horrific nature of these attacks, the news doesn't cover it. From what I see, because I think of schools, and when I think of schools, I would think that the numbers would be higher here. But as you can see, it's commerce locations, it's stores. That's where most of these are happening, or it's businesses, right? And why is that? Usually it's somebody who had worked there or is working there, or somebody who has somebody that is working there. And it can be said for most of these other criteria. Just wondering, can everybody see that, or is it a little kind of washed out? It's fine? Okay. I keep looking up at it, like I feel like that's getting dimmer.
Do you want me to adjust the lights?
Yeah, or if we can brighten it, you know what, maybe I'll try brightening the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know how it's going to do for the camera work. Oh my God, you're not going to be able to see me, which I'm all right with. So, we have commerce, education, outdoors, and other. The attacker connection to that location. As we can see, it's a pretty close split, whether there's a connection or there's not a connection. Okay? There's really not much to go further into that. And the connection could be whether it's that person is a patron, or whether that person just happens to know somebody that works in there or somebody that goes there. Attacker-victim relationship. The highest percentage is there's no relation from the attacker to the victim. Current or former employee. Okay. So as you can see, again, when we talk about who the attacker is and that there's no profile, well, these are some of the numbers that lead into that where there's no profile. Because no relationship. It's somebody, it's in that mind of that individual that wants to hurt people and act on his thoughts. Primary weapon used is firearm. There's also knives, bladed weapons, and vehicles have been used as well. And in a majority of these events, as you can see, 32.95 of the events, it's a multi-weapon attack. They've used several different, and I'll show you one of the incidents that occurred that is a multi-weapon attack. The numbers of the attackers, primarily it's one attacker. It's that one person, that lone wolf, that person who is isolated from everybody else. Because if he was talking to anybody about this, they probably would call law enforcement, get them involved. But as you can see, you have these people that are isolated from friends and family. They can't find anybody of like mind to go forward and go through one of these critical incidents or these active attack events. We'll discuss some of the active attack events. This is where a subject he stabbed 3 people in a dormitory, Santa Barbara. Then he used a handgun, and then he used his car. That car right there, that BMW, to run people down. So a multi-weapon, multi-pronged attack. So it's not just specific to firearms. Here in Orlando, at the Pulse nightclub, this person had a connection to this nightclub. And he went in with an assault-style rifle and killed 49 people. All because he was a patron there, but he was suffering from something that he thought that he should act on. Las Vegas, Nevada, 59 people were victims, or that were killed. There were multiple, hundreds of victims from this. And this perpetrator was located in an elevated position and almost he had a wide field of fire. Talk about planning. He knew that this country music festival was going on. He got a room that was located on the corner, which gave him a wider field of fire. He brought up a lot of rifles and a lot of ammunition. That takes some planning. These people here being unprepared because you're sitting there, you're watching some music, you're listening to music, you're probably having a few alcoholic and some adult beverages, and suddenly there's rifle fire and you don't really expect it, coming from an elevated position. A lot of these people were out in the open and didn't know what to do. In a situation like this, if you ever find yourself out in the open and you hear any type of firearms discharge or report, the best thing to do is get behind something that's covered. Okay? There's concealment in this cover. Something I learned in the military is concealment is I'm hiding behind a bush just to conceal that I'm there. Cover is something that's going to be able to withstand bullets, right? So a large cement wall, a large tree, a large rock, anything like that. Vehicles are not great cover. They provide you a little bit if you are up by the engine, because the engine block is the only thing that's going to stop any type of incoming rounds. New York City, this person rented a Home Depot truck. This was just vehicular. Sutherland Springs, Texas. The attacker went into a church, and he was forwarded by someone who lived in close proximity to the church to hear the gunfire, and he went and got his own weapon and took the attack to the attacker and drove him off. Otherwise, there would have been a lot more victims in this situation. And we know, since 2017, there have been hundreds more of these events. And what these attackers do is they will look at all these previous attacks and they take strategies, they learn from it, they read it, and they prepare from it. Just like we do, just like law enforcement does. The number of deaths in these events is related to how quickly the police arrive and target availability, right? As you can see, target availability, and then we have, obviously, there's a photo of an empty hallway. So we're going to get to this a little bit more. 3 minutes is the average response time of a police department, depending on various factors. And again, not just specifically here to this school, but to anywhere you might be, okay? A store, somebody's office building, a gym, a restaurant. 3 minutes is the average response time. Because by the time the shooting starts, and we as human beings recognize that the shooting has started, and 911 is called, and the 911 call goes to a 911 operator, and they'll ask you for your location. They'll take down some information, and then they're going to transfer you to that police department to start dispatching cars. How much time is that? We're already looking at some time right there. And then once cars are dispatched, then you have, not all police officers are going to be on the spot right then and there. So there's travel time depending on the location or the size of location that that officer is responsible for. How many officers are on duty at the time? You know, depending on where you are, if you're in a large metropolitan police department, you're probably looking at 16 to 20. But if you're looking at a small police department, you might have 1 or 2 people on. And depending on where they are or what they're doing, and if they're not on vacation, if they're not on sick time, so that's going to obviously affect the response time. The time of day, is this during a shift change? And when the Lewiston shooting happened, when I first saw it, I looked at it and there's something not right here, because statistically, most of these events occur during the daytime. I wasn't really thinking of the location. I wasn't thinking of a bowling alley, which is more populated later, in the evening, later afternoon, and into the night. Wasn't really thinking about that. My mind immediately went to, something doesn't seem right here. But this is the first time I've ever seen something that's a little bit later. Again, weather, and I already talked about department size. Why is weather a factor? You really can't go you can't go 75 to 100 miles an hour to respond to a call if the roads are covered in snow. So that's going to limit the response time. So 3 minutes. So this is basically boiling down to you. When I said initially that your safety is your responsibility for that first 3 to 5 to 10 minutes, because we have to have officers arrive on scene, and then they either have to put their gear on or kitted up before they go inside of a building. Okay, so we're adding more time to it. So it's your safety is your responsibility for these precious minutes before law enforcement gets there. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So, we as human beings, we respond to disaster in different ways. Right? If you're not exposed to it on a daily basis, if something happens, it's shocking. It shocks the system and you don't realize what's happening because you don't want to believe what's happening. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we behave as people when we are involved in any type of disaster or in a high-stress situation. There's 3 stages of the disaster response. There's denial, deliberation, and the decisive movement. These are 3 words that were used by an author of a book called The Unthinkable, Amanda Ripley. She studied this and wrote about it, that the people who survive these active attack events will go through these 3 stages quicker than other people. They'll go through that denial stage, that deliberation stage, and that decisive moment stage much quicker, and they process things faster, and they take better actions at the decisive moment. Why? Depends on a lot of things. Depends on where we grew up. Depends on what type of household we grew up in. If your father was the type of person that told you to prepare for anything and prepared you, again, if it was where you lived, that you had to be prepared in case somebody, depending on where you lived, if you knew that you were probably going to get into a fight walking to school or maybe at school, it prepared you a little bit more so you knew how to react if somebody approached you and threatened you. Okay? So the people that, or if it's in the military or someone who is in law enforcement, that they have either witnessed or been through critical situations or high-stress events, and they have slowly built up how to respond to it. They have gone through that process of training themselves on how to respond. And we'll talk about that response. We'll talk about the denial phase. Okay, the first stage of denial. Okay, it's refusing to admit the truth, the reality of something unpleasant. Why do we do that? I still find myself doing it sometimes. Why is that? There's a couple different reasons. These are just a couple different reasons that are being illustrated by this program. There's normalcy bias. So we try to take whatever is going on, and without really clearly looking at it, we try to fit it into what we see every day. Oh, this has got to be normal. Like if I hear a loud gunshot, what's your immediate thought? Oh, it's a car backfiring. Someone just brought balloons in, or somebody has lit off a firework or a firecracker. Now, if you think about that, who's going to be lighting a firecracker in somebody's office? Are you really going to hear a car backfiring? But that's what our brain does. It tries to fit what we're seeing or what we're hearing into something that is normal, that we can accept, something that we truly understand. Okay. Social proof. We are social animals. We look to other people on how to react. Now, the analogy I like to use here, if we go to a dinner party, I don't go to many dinner parties that are fancy, but there's all kinds of forks and spoons and plates and glasses that if I don't know how to use them, I'm going to wait. Why am I waiting? I'm going to see what someone else is doing. Oh, use that fork for this. Use that spoon for this. So I'm going to wait. So I'm looking for that social proof as to what I'm going to do. Okay? So we don't know how to act or behave in a certain situation because we've never experienced it before. So we're going to look to other people. Like if we heard a loud bang out there right now, we might start looking at each other and looking to see who's doing what. I can tell you that when I used to work at the Portsmouth Police Department, the fire alarm would go off all the time. So what did that develop in me? Fire alarm going off, looking around to see what everybody else is doing. If there's nobody really reacting to it, guess what I'm doing? I'm sitting at my desk finishing my report, because that's what I have to do. I don't have time to respond to this fire alarm in the appropriate manner. So it's that social proof. We look to others to see how we're going to react. There's a short video just to kind of give you an example.
Place like this street in New York City. If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help! Help!
How long before he gets help?
Please, somebody. Help! Help me, son. Please help me.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please, somebody help me.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You alright? You alright?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
You want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You alright, yeah? Yes, you are.
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm alright.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay.
And I thought, well, it's wet, so he must really be ill because he's going to ruin his suit anyway.
Okay, so how does this relate to what we're talking about here? As you can see, depending on what the situation is, people, again, what that gentleman said, just don't want to really become involved. But if you see something happening, and you just like, you know, that diffusion of responsibility, if I don't have to be part of this, I won't. But then you have one person, it takes one person that can be the example. If that person is the example and they know what they're doing and they know why they're doing it, other people are going to look at them and say, if they're doing that, I'm doing this. You saw that for the last example, what was it, 5 seconds? So the same situation can be in an active attack event. If you're that person who is listening to this and you're absorbing it and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about, depending on where you are, if I hear something or if I see something, I know exactly what it is and I'm going to start to act on it. And if you start to act on it, guess what? Other people are going to start to act on it because you'll be telling them, go this way, do this, and you're going to be that person who's going to be the prepared individual that can set the example of the tone for the group and save a lot of people, to include yourselves or family members or loved ones. Now we're going into talk about the deliberation phase. So we talked about denial, that we are human beings and we are initially in denial. We have that biasy, the norming, the normalcy bias and the social proofing as to why we deny that things are happening. Now we're going to talk about deliberation. What am I going to do and how am I going to do it? Right? Deliberation is a slow and careful movement of thought. Right? You have time, if you see something, you have time to analyze and to think about what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. It's because you have the time to do so. But it's situational. I say it's situational. So, when we're deliberating in this static, this sterile environment that we have right here, I could throw out a couple of different equations or word problems, and you could think through them, and you could come up with an answer because you're not under any type of stress, and you're going to be able to think about it. You're going to be able to sit there and think about everything that you need to do or how you need to act. We're going to use our human brain, right? Something that we use every day, right? You have the time to react. Use your human brain. If you are put in a situation that you're not familiar with, you're uncomfortable with, or it's happening so fast, you don't know how to react, we're going to go to what they call the lizard brain, or what many people will call it's primal instinct, right? It's that primal instinct. Now for this one, I always use the example of a squirrel crossing the street, using his thoughtful brain to cross the street. He knows he wants to get from that side to this side, but when he sees a 2-ton vehicle bearing down on him, what do? They freeze. Sometimes they'll freeze and they'll look at you. But that's just how they're processing it. They don't know really what to do. You might get the smart squirrel. We'll go back to where he came from, or run. But for the most part, we're talking about human brain and that lizard brain. So we have, it's reflective, it's a thinking brain, flexible, depending on the scenario, the situation, or the problems that are coming in, you can handle pretty much anything and everything, right? You have time to think about it. If you have no time for deliberation, we are now just strictly using our lizard brain. You're going to have 3 responses. You have fight, flight, or freeze. Much like that squirrel, they'll freeze or they'll flee. In this situation, with our lizard brain, we are able to train our lizard brain for different reactions, which is why we're here today. Like if an active attack happened and you have no previous experience, training, or education on it, you're going to be relying solely on your lizard brain. Your lizard brain is going to provide you with these 3 options. Okay, and then that's it. But what we're able to do with our human brain or our reflective brain is to train our lizard brain on how to react. Is it confusing? I'm probably making it more confusing than it really is. But you're going to be able to train on how to respond. That's what the military does. That's what police do. When they inoculate you against gunfire, fighting, or anything like that, they inoculate you to respond in the correct manner. You're able to train that lizard brain using your human brain. Everybody follow me? Okay. So that's what we're doing here now. We are giving you that first inoculation against the virus. The virus being that active attack event, much like the pandemic we just had. Or the flu. You have to go for that initial inoculation, and then you kind of have to keep up with it if you want to keep it at bay. So this is that small little piece that we're doing. We're taking that first step to show you and to tell you what you can do, so we don't end up doing one of these. Again, the flight one is important, but you may be in a situation where you're going to freeze up or you're going to find yourself fighting. Denial and deliberation. So the denial phase, understand something bad is happening, and the deliberation is deciding on what to do based on the circumstances. Why prepare? Because on top of this, we can think about this all we want, but yet again, there's another variable that comes in. Once we realize that we are in a life and death situation, guess what's going to happen to our body, and our pulse, and our heart rate, right? So things are going to start to elevate, and when things start to elevate, we start to lose our human brain. Our human brain starts to shut down. We can't really think rationally through anything, right? We start making some irrational movements and some irrational decisions because stress and anxiety has now taken over our body. So we need to understand what is occurring and know that if we are put in an active attack event, that we can survive. We're not going to be victims here. So we're going to talk about some things that you can do during this active attack event that can help you through this incident. Our stress response is based on, again, anytime, if you could imagine yourself sitting in your living room, you're watching a movie. You are at a very low pulse rate or beats per minute, but then you hear something outside, you hear a loud bang. And that kind of gets your pulse up a little bit more. You know, it's midnight, you're watching a scary movie. There's a storm outside. Suddenly you hear glass break. And now our blood pressure is going to be elevating a little bit more as we think about it. Right? We may not be able to act appropriately should something then meet us in the living room. So as our beats per minute increase, we're going to go through several different conditions of a stress response. Condition white, normal and resting. In condition yellow, as our beats per minute increase, you're going to start to lose some fine motor skills. Right? What does that mean? They've always taught us in the military and in law enforcement how to manipulate pistols and how to do things like this. And if we start to get under stress, we're going to lose that fine motor skills that we have in our hands because we're going to lose that dexterity in our fingers. So we have to keep the gross motor skills. So you'll start to lose some of the fine motor skills that you have. Maybe dialing a phone, right? If you're trying to dial 911 and you're hitting 822, right? You're going to lose some of that. Complex motor skills start to deteriorate, but in condition red, and again, as part of, as we as human beings, how we have evolved, and think about the cavemen running from the saber-toothed tiger, we are in this condition red, our beats per minute are gone up. That's because we are preparing ourselves to fight. That primal instinct is now kicking in. We are preparing ourselves to fight. So this will slow down, you know, if you are cut or shot, it will slow down your bleeding. Okay, you'll be stronger, you'll be faster, you'll be ready for the fight. But if you're not able to control your beats per minute, it's going to keep rising and rising. And as it continues to rise, you will lose the ability to actually think through the process of what you need to do. We're reverting from our human brain to where we know what we're going to do, we have some time to think about it, to where you're going to go into your lizard brain or your animal brain, and you're going to be left with limited responses. Then ultimately, if you don't have the mechanisms and the tools to control your beats per minute, you're going to go into this condition black, and you're going to freeze. I mean, I've experienced it where I've seen people just lose, they freeze, they don't know how to respond to anything. They don't move. And it's a situation that takes a while to recover from. And if it's during an active attack event, you don't have the time. So right here, you're not going to see anything graphic. This is a man going into a store in Paris, France. He has an AK-47. You're not going to see him, but you're going to see the response of the people once he goes in and he starts firing a weapon. You will see a young woman with a baby in a stroller. Now, I think the baby's probably maybe a year and a half to 2 years old. and she has difficulty taking the child out of the stroller. That's because her anxiety and her stress has gone up. She's lost those fine motor skills. She's taken this child in and out of that stroller probably hundreds of times. But this time she doesn't know how to manipulate the snaps, the buttons, straps, or anything. She eventually gets the child out, but it's a little rougher than what she's probably normally used to. Just an example, right? She's elevated, she's under stress, she's getting pushed, there's noise, there's people yelling and screaming and pushing by her. Right? Now, in a normal situation, she'd probably bend over, undo the snaps, and gently lift the child out in less time. But because she's hastened by the situation that is going on around her, she has lost some of her cognitive processing and some of the dexterity in her hands. No time and stress. We are relying solely on the lizard brain. Limited response. I'm sure a lot of people here, well, maybe. The tragedy at the station nightclub. There was a fire. We'll talk a little bit about this because it gives a pretty good example. You know, unfortunately, when you have these critical incidents or these very tragic events, that it's up to law enforcement and officials to kind of look at what happened and to learn from it. Is it Monday morning quarterback? It absolutely is. I wasn't there. I wasn't experiencing this. But we're going to learn from what happened. If anybody needs, I know some people came in late. If anybody needs to use the restroom, you want to grab a snack or water, please feel free to do so. Okay? You're not anchored to your chair, so you can move about. So, February 20th, 2003. 11 o'clock at night, we had some people there to see the band Great White. There was 462 people in attendance. 100 people were killed, 230 were injured. Some more background on it. As you can see, they were over the maximum capacity. The station nightclub had been previously fined by the fire department because they didn't have fireproof, they didn't put any fireproofing inside the building. They were usually over maximum capacity. And as you can see, the fire alarm was not connected to the local fire department. And they didn't have a sprinkler system. They were grandfathered in where they were not required to have any of that. But unbeknownst to the patrons and to local officials, because the station nightclub had been receiving complaints about excessive noise, because you're having bands in there, from excessive noise, they put soundproofing foam inside. And what makes this the perfect storm? The soundproofing that they put in there was not fire retardant. Okay? So you have a situation where you have this building that is over capacity. You have no sprinkler system. The fire alarm is not directly connected to the local fire department. And then you have a bunch of people that probably are not really familiar with this establishment. So as we go through the establishment, this is just a little, as you can see, a diagram. So you have the front hall, which most people would go through. If we were going there, we would go through the front entrance, and we would congregate around this main stage without really knowing anything else about the club. Unless you were somebody who has been there before, right? So the people that survived this, that had either been there before or they had prepared themselves to know where all the exits are. Something that I find myself doing more often than not when I go places. I'm going to try to find out where the exits are, other than where I came in. Why is that important? Because if I'm in a panic or under stress and I'm no longer in control of my brain, that lizard brain is coming in, I'm going to go right back to where I came in because that's the only thing I know. And as we'll see here, cost a lot of people their lives. So there's different exits here. Always look for another exit. Anytime you, and I'm going to tell you this, if you're going into Target, Walmart, Market Basket, wherever, go through the front doors and understand that when you go through the front doors, there's all kinds of different exits that you can use. And if you do happen to hear something go to the front of the, happening at the front of the store, don't run to the front of the store. Find another exit and get out. Okay, just a little sidebar there. So we have, here's an exit here off of the kitchen. we have the main bar that has an exit, and then we have an exit right here by the stage. Okay? So you first walk in, coming in here, you don't know of any of these other exits because if you've never been there, you're not looking for them. You're there to see Great White. This video is a brief video, and I'll stop it. You're not going to see anything, but I'm still going to stop it a little bit early. But you will see what happens, what denial is. Right? When you have people that are getting through that denial stage faster, going through that deliberation stage, and then getting to what the last one is, that decisive moment. And we'll go back through it and we'll show it. But this video was made by a local television station down in Warwick because the owner of this bar also had part ownership in this television station. So that's why the camera was there that night, to show people that this was a great venue for live music. So that's why we had it. So Great White is on stage, and what they have on each side is called a plurb. What's a plurb? It's basically a small little firework in a coffee can that shoots. Anybody familiar with sparklers when we were kids? This is what these plurbs are. And so what the road manager of Great White did not know is that the foam, the acoustic foam, was not fireproof. Okay? What the management of the station nightclub did not know is that Great White was going to be using pyrotechnics. On top of everything else, being over maximum, and no sprinklers, and not really keeping up with fire code. So, what happens when you run to that front entrance where you went in is that people are starting to pile up, and the people behind them are in a panic because that they see these people in front of them, they can't get out. So that's how stampeding occurs. So, unfortunately, what you have here is these red discs, these yellow discs. These are people who passed away inside this building. As you can see, this front entrance has a majority of our victims. Again, that is because that's how they went in. When panic set in, when that stress response set in, they went back to how they got in there, because they didn't know any other way. So their lizard brain brought them right back to the front entrance. Now, so I said that there were 100 people killed and 252 injured, but there was 464 people inside that building. So what did the other people do differently? You know, was it all about a location as to where they were? Did they happen to be in the main bar? Did they happen to work in the kitchen? How did all these people get out? You know, not everybody passed away. So you saw the response. There was that initial denial. There's a big fire in front of me. Oh, this must be part of the show. Again, that normalcy bias. Oh, it's pyrotechnics. All right, they're still playing. Even the band was still playing. Then we have, once they start to realize that this is not really part of the show, they're starting to go through that deliberation phase. There's still people standing at the stage, though. You have some people that have gone through that denial stage, the deliberation stage, and they've made the decision to move. But not everybody's doing that. And like I said, the people who are slower going through the denial phase and the deliberation phase, they're the ones that started to pile up here and they started to panic. Like I said before, once you start to panic, you're focused on getting out. You're not using your human brain anymore. Because if I try to go out that door and I see that it's clogged, what would be the normal reaction? I'm going to try to find another way out. I'm not going to keep going towards that door. It's clogged. But the lizard brain had taken over, right? They had lost all cognitive ability to think through this problem and to process it. We have people that they knew this is where the main entrance was and they gathered right here. Couldn't get out. These are all windows. And again, not something that we normally do, but we're not thinking normally. We're thinking about going out the way we came in. You're not thinking about breaking a window to save your own life. So that will come in later as, if you hear something or see something, you're going to try every avenue of escape. There is nothing that is out of, you can do anything you want. Breaking windows, going through a wall. Most of the walls are, not the particle board, but the chalkboard or the slate board that you can put your foot through, and if you can get a big enough hole to get out, you can get out. Things to think about. If you have to break a window and you have to climb down from 1 story or 2 stories, what's the alternative? Possibly getting shot. So think about everything. Every avenue of escape. The denial phase, and I don't talk strictly about the band here. The band kept playing even though it was on fire, and talk about, because they had been through this, with the pyrotechnics going off all the time. This door here was guarded by the road manager. When people tried to exit from this door, from the fire, he told them, no, this is for the band only, and pushed them away. So, because he wasn't thinking clearly as to the gravity of the situation, because it was all evolving way too fast for him to comprehend. So the band gets out, and there was one of the band members that died. He initially got out, but he went back in to get his guitar. Again, being in that denial phase, going back in to get a guitar from a place that was fully engulfed. Has anybody here ever been inside a building that's been fully on fire? I have. And I can tell you, when they say to get down and crawl, the thick black smoke, it probably went from the ceiling all the way down to the floor. And there was no way you're going to be able to breathe in it. And again, this is talking strictly about a fire, but it's that reaction to the situation that's going on and knowing what you need to do. Not just kind of doing what you would normally do, that lizard brain taking over and running headlong into that smoke. You're going to suffer a lot of different type of ailments. So he went back in to get his guitar. That's the story there. Because he was in that denial phase. He wanted to go back in and get his guitar. So initially, no panic, right? I'm at a concert, I'm at a show. The pyrotechnics, this is normal. And then slowly, people started to kind of get through that denial phase. They were still in there using their human brain to process what was going on, and they started to leave. Once those people started to leave, and then if you saw some of the people like turning, right, that social proofing, like other people are leaving, I guess I should leave as well, because not everybody's reacting in the same way. Once the primary entrance was clogged and inaccessible, panic set in. People reverting to their lizard brain, not thinking clearly that there's other X points of egress inside this building. Why did some people get out? I think I've touched upon it. They have either been there before, they were familiar with the establishment, they had already been through a critical incident or a stressful situation, they had already prepared themselves when they first walked in, walking around, grabbing a beer, looking for exits. They knew where to go and what to do. They reacted initially to that fire. Instead of standing there and be someone who's going to be at the end of that crowd going out the door, they were one of the first people out the door. If you rely solely on your lucid brain, you're going to make some very poor decisions. If you're not properly prepared ahead of time. This is what we're doing here today. We're going to properly prepare you for a critical incident should it happen to you in your lifetime. Not just here at school, like I said, restaurants, bars, stores, or anything like that. Think about what you're going to do during that deliberation phase. You can sit here right now and think about any location and start to script what you are going to do. You're going to practice it. You can, and I tell people this, okay, we're going to strictly, like, if you work here, you go in a certain way every morning. If something starts to happen, that's how your lizard brain is going to have you exit. If you have the time and the ability, try using a different entrance, try using a different exit. Use things that are differently, so you're going to have different options, and you're going to know where to go. Should that primary exit be blocked off for some reason, or whether there is an active threat right there, that you're going to know how to get out from another point of egress or another exit. Script practice. So script is just basically thinking through things. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this? I can tell you that being in law enforcement for long, I can remember learning it in the Maine State Police Academy, and anytime I was responding to a call, I would go through what I'm going to do when I get there. Right? Barring an unknown situation coming at me, or coming in, I was already scripting about what I was going to do. And if this should happen, how am I approaching the front door? All right, I'm going to approach it from the side. As soon as I knock, I'm not going to stand in front of the door. I'm going to walk down and step off to the side. Okay, these are some of the things that you learn, because not everybody likes the police, and if they're coming to your door, and if you have a firearm and bad intentions, you're going to fire through that door, and we've all heard stories about that. So I was always thinking about that and taking those extra steps to be safe. Preparing mentally and physically. So mentally scripting and then practicing doing that physical movement, going out a different exit. During an incident or a situation, when I talk to you about a stress response and how your beats per minute go up and how you want to keep your human brain engaged. How do we do that? Breathing. Keep breathing. Okay? If you can keep breathing and you become focused on that breathing, you can slow down your beats per minute. And here's proof. You run on the treadmill, hasn't been lately, but running on the treadmill, you have the heart sensors and your heart's up to a certain rate. As soon as you cool down and you start to walk, I actively do what they call combat breathing. Combat breathing is I'm inhaling for 3 seconds, I'm holding it for 3 seconds, and I'm exhaling for 3 seconds. I'm slowing down my breath purposefully. And it will decrease your pulse much faster than going into any type of hyperventilation. That's just going to completely take away your human brain and your cognitive thought. So, and then shift your emotion. Once you get back in the human brain, that mindset, think about what you're going to do. Shift your emotion. Do not be afraid. Do not be scared. Turn that around. Be angry that this person who has his own personal agenda that he's trying to force upon you and to make a statement about themselves, because they're all very selfish. Say, I'm not going to let him take my life today, or the people that I work with, or the people that I love. Shift your emotion to anger. And as we get older, staying fit is not always, sometimes on the board you can try, but then you will find that your joints are breaking down from trying to stay fit. So, but again, a good thing to keep in mind if you're able to. Keep moving. If anybody needs to stand up, go ahead and stand up and do whatever you need to do to kind of keep yourself involved. Rick Roscola was an English citizen who grew up during World War II. He recalled being infatuated with the United States military that was over in England. So when he was able to, he moved over to the United States and he joined the United States military. He was in Vietnam. And then after his military service, he started to work for Dean Woodard Morgan Stanley at the Twin Towers. He came in and he did his threat assessment. He immediately came in and saw that there was a problem with the parking garage. He told the people that he worked with, we need to get out of this building. It is a target for the rest of the world that does not like the United States. It represents something. So when they didn't want to do that, he says, okay, well, we need to do this. We need to reinforce this, and this. And he said specifically the parking garage underneath it. And what happened some years later, there was a vehicle-borne explosive device that was parked next to one of the pillars, and they set it off. It did not take the building down. But again, he reiterated that they needed to get out of the building and relocate. He was told, no, we are not going to do that. So Rick Roscola took it upon himself to protect the people that he worked with or worked for, and that he was going to do everything within his power to train them. And how did he train them? He had evacuation drills. He would time them, and every time if the time was not satisfactory to him, they would go through it again. He would do it annually. He would do it on a regular basis, so he would get people through that and inoculate them. Should something happen, they're going to know what to do. He would put them through that practice, that repetition. So when 9/11 did happen, a lot of people owe their lives to Rick Broscola. Not only because he had trained them, because he also went back into the building to help them evacuate. He was last seen heading up with a bullhorn, and unfortunately, Rick perished on the day of 9/11/2001, but he has made an everlasting mark on the people that he saved that day for generations to come, as well as their family members. Again, a prepared individual. That decisive moment, we are at the last stage of disaster response. So the decisive moment is recognizing that there's something not right here, using your human brain to think through it, and what am I going to do? Okay? You see that you have a fraction of a second to kind of act on something, and you have the power to do something, and to have a plan in place that you're going to do. You're going to act upon that plan. So, if everybody's, I'm sure you're familiar with the would-be shooting on the train in Paris. Please. Jump. No. Do you guys work? I guess not. So, I'll tell you a little bit about, so we have two people that are in the military. They all met in Paris. They were taking a little bit of a vacation. You had one person on the train who was armed with a pistol and also with an AK-47. Now, fortunately, the person with the AK-47 didn't really know how to use it, which is fortunate for everybody on that train. This gentleman here in the middle, so we have, I forget his name. If the video would run, that'd be great. So he took, because he had been through the military, he had been through some situations, but by no means was he like a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL. He was an airman. I think he might have even been a reservist. But he had kind of gone through some inoculation, and he knew how firearms worked. So he saw his opportunity when this man was shooting people that the AK-47 had a malfunction. So he saw that, and at that decisive moment when he knew he could act, he did, and he ran at the man with the rifle. And he was able to subdue that man. Now, so you had somebody that went through the denial phase, the liberation phase, and the decisive movement. His two friends saw what he was doing. Again, there's that social proofing. I'm seeing what he's doing. I'm going to go do the same thing. I'm going to go help him out. We can stop this. And they did. Take a 5-minute break if you'd like. I'm going to kind of keep pushing on, just so we can cover all the information. Now we're going to get to what we can do during an active attack event. Now, granted, our response is, depending on where you are, you're going to be able to do what you can always do. You don't have some of the tools to be implemented during one of these attacks. You're not going to suddenly have a firearm fall out of the ceiling or take it out of an ankle bolster. So, but you have those precious minutes when you first hear it happen before law enforcement is going to respond or arrive. That you have those minutes there. It can range from anywhere from, if the police get there at 3 minutes, again, which I said it is a good response time, that it could be up to 10 minutes. And your safety is your responsibility. Now, and here, how we are going to respond to these incidents, it's very simple. It's a simple method. Depending on the situation, the criteria, and the scenario that you're facing. Right? So, this is very fluid. You don't have to stick with one. You can do one, and then when you feel like you have an opportunity, you can do something else. Or if you're initially preparing yourself to fight, but then you hear something going, you hear a commotion, or you hear the shooter or whatever, or the attacker is at a different location, that they move really quickly, we're going to go to the avoid. Right? If you're initially hiding, you're gonna go, or if you are initially trying to avoid by running down the hallway, you hear gunfire, guess what? If I can no longer go that way, can I go back where I came from, or can I duck into a side room to kind of go through the hide portion of this? Avoid, deny, defend, or it's run, hide, fight. Ready? So, this is Christina Anderson, as it says. I really want this one anyway.
Oh.
So Christina Anderson was a student at Virginia Tech.
We heard the first shots at around 9:40 a.m. I was sitting on the wall of the classroom, so in the hallway, and I could hear the shots getting closer and closer very quickly. I mean, there was only a few seconds between the first time we heard them and when he actually walked in. To me, it sounded like an axe being taken to a piece of wood. And our teacher, she opened the door and she peered outside and she immediately shut the door and she said, "Call 911." And right then, he walked in just seconds after. There's absolutely no time to think or to duck or to take cover, and people just kind of fell to the floor. And he immediately walked in shooting, and he went to the other side of the classroom, and he started going down the rows. He went down each row very quickly, very purposefully. And I remember thinking, your turn is coming. You're going to get shot. I mean, I didn't realize there was an active shooter, but I knew something bad was happening. He came back to our classroom 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he killed himself in the front of the class. In between each time he was there, you could just hear people crying and coughing, and the cell phone started ringing. When he was in our class, I remember trying not to breathe very much, so he couldn't tell I was alive. Because as my stomach was hitting the chair, I was thinking, you know, he can see me breathing, he can see me alive, and that was very scary. I'll never forget when the SWAT team first broke in at around 9:51. The officer in the front of the classroom said, "We have a lot of blacks in here." And at the time, I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, but he meant triage codes. And I remember looking to the girl to my right and realizing, you know, what black meant. He looked over me and he said, first he said yellow, and then he changed it immediately and he said red. And that's when I first started panicking. I still couldn't speak. I was shot 3 times, lying on my back. And I remember thinking, what do you see? Like, what can you see on me that I can't, that you would?
So a little bit from her story, we're going to cover a little bit more about Virginia Tech because it has a lot of, I mean, a very sad situation, but a lot of examples of how people were able to act and what they did mattered on the lives of some other people. For Christina Anderson, I mean, if somebody comes in, and again, not to sound morbid, but if somebody comes into where you are with any type of firearm, you have no way to defend yourself from that. Like, we're talking milliseconds. If I'm in here by myself and somebody comes in with a firearm, I might be able to turn and look, but I'm not going to be able to do anything. If you look at the situation in Lewiston, people that were playing cornhole and bowling, they didn't have the time to react, to go through any type of stage. You know, that is the unfortunate situation is they didn't have time to well, maybe it's a good thing that they didn't have time to think about what's going on. But you do see some of the footage where other people were running out of the building. So it shows you that, yes, people, as an instinct that we have, is to run away. Christina Anderson had never been through anything like this. Why should she? She's a young girl going to Virginia Tech. She's sitting in a classroom. Why does she need to think about this? But when it did start to happen, they initially heard gunshots in a different room. And she even says that her professor looked out and said, call 911, all right? So her professor had the wherewithal to kind of, she reacted, she went through the denial stage and made a decision to have somebody call 911, that there was something going on. She recognized it. She also, so Christina says something, a lot of different things in here, again, Monday morning quarterbacking, is that the shooter left the room. He went in 3 times. Now, what could you possibly do while he's not in the room any longer? And we'll talk a little bit more, but think about that. What could you possibly do if that shooter has now left the scene or left the room that you're in? What can you do to prevent him from coming back in? Again, that target availability. This program is about limiting that target availability. She also talks about, her only thought was, I'm gonna try to limit my breathing so he hopes that I'm dead. And one of the phrases used in this training is, hope is not a strategy, right? You can hope all you want, and again, if you have a limited response in how you're gonna respond to any of these situations, that's how your brain is gonna think, okay? Is to limit your breathing. So is anybody here familiar with firearms or have any experience with firearms? Whether you've shot them, whether you've heard them, whether you have someone so you know what they sound like. So this is just gonna, for those that have not, okay, don't deny when you hear something like that. Depending on your proximity, you will hear that gunfire and then you will hear brass hitting the floor. It's not a firecracker, it's not a vehicle backfiring, it is not a balloon popping, it has a very distinctive sound. Along with that distinctive sound, again, situationally, you're going to smell that burnt gunpowder in the air. It has a very distinctive smell. I can still remember it from Paris Island. It almost has like this acrid ammonia smell, right, once it goes off. Don't deny that those are gunshots. Don't say, oh, those are fireworks. Somebody was lighting fireworks off in the office. Nobody is. Go through that denial phase. Get to your deliberation phase. What am I going to do? You should have already thought about what you're going to do. If I hear gunshots, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, depending on where you are. Now, I don't want you to walk around your entire life and you go into different places and be fearful that something's going to happen. But should you hear something that doesn't sound right, that it doesn't sound right, recognize it, go through the denial phase and get to deliberation phase as to what you're going to do. Hiding and hoping is not a strategy. What's wrong with this gentleman here? Maybe he wasn't really left with a lot of options, and this is his best option. It's not a great option, it's an option. Would I rather try to run out and maybe dodge? Maybe, again, I'm not there. These desks, these tables, these walls, some of these walls are not going to provide you with cover. Like I talked about cover in one of those first slides. It's anything that can withstand the direct impact of a round, whether it's a pistol or a rifle round. Okay? This metal desk is not going to do that. Motor vehicles are not going to do that. Some police officers have learned the very hard way that police cruisers are not going to stop a round from going through. So, again, we're talking about avoid, deny, defend. Avoid starts with your state of mind. Pay attention to your surroundings. Have an exit plan. Move away from the source of the threat. A pretty simple strategy here. Okay? The more distant and barriers between you and the threat, the better. I can remember when, I was actually at Lowell, I learned about, I took some nuclear class and they're talking about shielding and distance. This is the same thing. You're going to be, like I learned about being protected from radiation because of shielding and distance. The same thing here. You're going to protect yourself with distance and shielding.
From the technologies or notice some of the sharpness you have there, and it's part of
situational awareness.
Plan we have, the workshop we're going to have this meeting, but this would be the first step in that whole process.
This guy is spray painting a big A, or I think it's a V for vendetta, sorry, on the wall. And you see some people reacting and some people not reacting to this. Everybody's looking to everybody else. How do we react to this?
Hey, sir. John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead.
You have this woman here who has a plan. Not really an effective plan, but she was going to do something. So, right from the get-go, if this guy is drawing a V from Vendetta on the wall and he produces a handgun, you saw a lot of people in the audience that didn't move. They really didn't understand what was happening. This occurred down in Florida at a school committee meeting. He was upset because his wife had been terminated, who was a teacher, and they were going to lose their health benefits, and there was some health situation going on there. So you have the people on the school committee trying to rationalize with somebody who is irrational, right? At that particular point, your responsibility is to protect yourself and then protect others. But you need to get out of a situation like that. Did that feel right to anybody? It wouldn't feel right to me. If it seems like that, if it looks to feel wrong and it feels wrong, which that did, exit immediately. People in the audience kind of sat there and stared at him, giving him the opportunity to use them as a target. Don't listen to his banter. Don't listen to what he has to say. Run and get out. And again, in that situation.
Can I ask a question though? In a situation like that, if somebody tried to reason with the person or confront him in some way, is that a technique that you would recommend or not recommend? Like you're saying, just get out. What if someone tried to say, look, you don't want to do this?
Oh, somebody does.
Yeah.
The people on the school committee are trying to reason with him, and there's no, like I said, he is very irrational, and you can't really sometimes rationalize with somebody who's irrational. He already has it in his mind. His mindset is that he's going to make a point. He doesn't care what you have to say. He wants to say what he wants to say. He wants to control the room and do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I can't say in every situation. I mean, it's hard, and I don't know who that person is, right? I don't know if I'm going to be able to reason with him. Even in doing my job, we always try to de-escalate the situation, right? Because we don't want to take anybody's life. However, if it keeps ramping up, I mean, pulling out a gun, in a law enforcement community, that is considered deadly force as soon as you present the firearm. So, as a citizen who doesn't have a firearm to react to that, your response to deadly force should be getting out, not trying to talk to them. It is not your responsibility to try to de-escalate them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Unless it's somebody you know and they have this trust in you and that you're a recognizable figure to them, that they might respond to you. But it's a deadly force situation. If I don't have anything to defend myself against that, my mouth isn't going to defend me against that. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll say that with every situation is fluid and dynamic and everything's different. There are a bunch of different pieces of criteria and stuff that go on that I don't know about. On its face, I don't know him, there's a gun. I'll see you later.
I can't believe they just sat there.
They just sat there. The one woman who, and again, I will give her half a golf clap for coming back behind him with a bag, but what she should have had is a fire extinguisher or a chair or something that if she could, and again, talking a little blunt here, strike him in the head to disable him, or when she did hit him with the bag, if somebody from the tables had stood up and started to engage him because she had distracted him, and forced him to kind of reassess what was going on, they could have done something, but she was by herself with a handbag.
Yeah.
Okay? And we'll talk about this. We'll talk about that. Jump. Leave. There we go. So this is that earlier video that we saw of the woman with the child in the carriage. This is the beginning of it. There's a man that walks in with an AK-47. You can see people on the street reacting to this by just getting out of their car and running. Or initially people running out of the front of the building. Now for the people sitting in their cars, like, well, why would you destroy the car? Well, maybe there's traffic there, maybe they can't get out, so their best course of action was to just leave, run away. This guy has this focal point of this store, and so even the people that saw him walk in with a gun, they immediately left through the front entrance. Now, for the people who were stuck in the interior of the store, it was a different situation, and we'll see more photos. Leave as soon as possible, know your exits, and call 911 when you're safe. Again, your safety is your responsibility. If you're able to leave and you get out, don't think that you need to immediately call 911. Get yourself in a safe location and then call 911. So, I talked about considering secondary exits. Remember, it's not just how you got in there, there's got to be other exits. We have, and usually I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, that do you know when the last time there was a student that was killed in a fire related to the school, a school fire? When the last time that happened? In the 50s. It was at a boarding school up in Buffalo or near Buffalo, New York. Okay? So not since the 50s, it's 1958, that we have seen a child injured in a school fire. Why is that?
Fire.
One. Anything else why we don't have fires in schools anymore?
Labeled exits.
I'm sorry?
Labeling exits.
Labeling exits, right? So we have fire drills labeling exits, and we build things out of fire retardant materials now. We have fire extinguishers. We have fire alarms. So there's redundancy. So in a situation like this with an active attacker, we're looking for redundancy. So it starts here. I've been here for a year. It starts with presentations like this to get you to think about what you're going to do. And then hopefully as we progress in that redundancy of like overloading you with what you need to do, there's emails, there's text messages, there's tabletop drills, there's actual drills. But there's a lot of moving parts that need to take place so we can have that, to get everybody here fully inoculated. Much like the school fires, we start with this. This is somewhat similar to, when a child walks in on that first day in school, that they're put through, this is what you need to do during a drill. We have documentation available. We have maps on what you are here. These are the exits. Okay? I usually mention that in the beginning. So consider secondary exits. So I see a person on her, holding her head in her hands. There's somebody next to her. Can anybody see what they're next to?
A door?
There's a door. I'm assuming, since it has a crash bar on it, that they can get out. It probably goes in, I think this is a very urban part of Paris. So that's going to go out into an alley. We have a ladder here. What do you think that ladder is for? It's probably, that's where the AC unit is, that's where the heater is, that's where all the stuff is on top of, because there's no room to put it inside the store. So another way to get out, secondary exits. So we've talked about avoid, then we talk about deny. Well, getting away is difficult or maybe impossible. Creating that distance. If I hear something down there, if I'm able to run safely down the other end of the building, maybe if there's another point of egress is blocked by something else, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. But having that time, having that distance, gives me time to react to it. Again, in the training that I had in law enforcement, for us, distance gives us that couple of more seconds that we're going to be able to think about what we need to do. If somebody here has a knife or a weapon, I'm going to try to immediately back up to reassess the situation and then figure out what I'm going to do. Same thing here. You want to create that space. Creating that space gives you a little more time to think about what you're going to do. It's not going to give you an infinite amount of time, but it's going to give you maybe 5 more seconds. All right, what did he say during that presentation? I'm going to control my breathing. Get yourself back into that human brain and think about what you're going to do. What are your next steps for survival? Create distance between you and the threat. Use barriers to prevent or slow you down from the threat. We'll talk about that a little bit more when it comes into more of the later in the presentation. So deny and hide. If you're able to get at the room that has a locking door, right, you want to shut the lights out and remain out of sight. These people who are active attackers are going into a building with one specific thing in mind, is they're looking for targets. They're looking for people to take their lives. They're looking for that victim count. Okay, so what it boils down to is, if they go up to a door that is locked, they're not going to take time to try to get into that. Statistically, they're not going to take time to get into that building. Into that room, unless there's something specifically that they're looking for. They're going to jiggle it and walk by, because what are they doing? They're looking for targets. They're looking for more victims. So if you are able to get into a room and lock it, and there's nobody in there, they are not going to waste their time trying to get into that room. I equate them to teenagers who are out late at night when they're going down a street where there's cars. They're jiggling doors to see if they get into the car to steal stuff inside. Now, if the door is locked, they move on to the next one. If that one is locked, they move on to the next one. If that one is unlocked, they're going to go inside and rifle through and take what they can take. Okay? Because they presented that opportunity. Okay?
So, this is all useful, and like, if I was by myself, I would totally do these things. But my brain would be totally different if my child was with me. So how would you, like, my first instinct would be to protect my child. Mm-hmm. So how would you do that? Like, how would you use this to...
How can you best protect your child?
Like, taking them with me and running.
The first thing that you can do is protect yourself. Because you're the person that's going to be protecting them. So if you can stay using your cognitive brain to kind of keep thinking, you're taking your child with you, but if you're the one that has been through this training, and you're the one that's the adult and thinking through this, you're the one that's responsible. Like I said, a prepared individual can save others. Now, you can add in children, you could add in fellow co-workers, friends. They may be looking to you and how to react. It's like the child that falls down, and if you don't react to it, they don't react to it. But if you start to go, "Oh, are you all right?" then they start to cry because they realize something has happened. Right. They look to you for their response.
It's like what they say on the airplane, like with the mask.
Right, you need to put your mask on first.
Right.
Right? Because you can't help your child if you're passed out. And it's really... It breaks down into a simple method, depending on what you're being presented with, the situational awareness. As adults, we've all been part of certain things that are different from anything else that we've had to deal with. But you kind of get through things based on different criteria, who you are as a person. But you think through it and you get through it. It's not always easy to do some of these things, but it's... you get through it, time passes on. So with a situation like this, and again, some simple movements may prevent you from being a victim. And I'm going on a little bit of a tangent. So, that's great. She made some space. She got away from the threat. But what didn't she do?
The door was wide open.
She didn't close that door. Right, that door. Right? So, what could she do? She could close that door. Go back to that, and barricade. Now, is this rack or this dumpster going to prevent somebody from pushing it in? No, but what are we talking about here? We're talking about those precious minutes or seconds from when it starts to when the police arrive. So if that barricaded door gives me another 5-10 seconds, or maybe he pushes on it, he can't get it open, and he moves to something else, and then he comes back in a minute or two. It's giving us time to slow down, control our breathing, and think about what we're going to do. It may not seem like a lot, but again, there's those precious seconds and minutes as to what we're going to do next. Lock doors behind you, or consider other points of egress. Again, the deny and hide, if you can't lock the door, depending on whether it's a outward opening door, so these doors are outward opening, and if they only had one door, you need to figure out a way to use your belt. You can secure that if it is a couple of people that can secure that door from being open from the outside. Does it sound ridiculous? It might, but if you need that extra 30 seconds before the police arrive, it just might give you that time. Okay? If it's inward opening, I'm piling stuff up against the door. Or even, you know what, if all these doors are here, even if we push all the tables up there while people are running out the back, it gives us a few seconds to where this person has to move all the tables out of the way, the active attacker has to move tables out of the way before they can continue their pursuit of us. And maybe by that time, we've had plenty of people that have gone to a different exit. Heavier the better, more the better, right? Inward opening doors using a door stop, right? Something simple as, and I just bought some from Amazon, just a simple door stop could give you those precious seconds where they're not going to be able to force the door open because this little rubber door stop is going to prevent them from coming in. So we're talking about the barricading. Again, this trash dumpster or this rack, I'm not going to completely stop somebody who's driven on getting in there, but it's going to give us a couple more seconds to think about and to get back into our human brain about what we could possibly do next. It's going to keep us in the fight. So there's the outward opening door using a belt to secure that. As you can see, this gentleman has used his belt or some other type of strap. We all work with computers. We all have power cords. You can use computers, power cords. What's better than one power cord? 2, 3, 4 power cords, right? You have that. It's a better. It's not just that single strap. You have 4 straps. It's going to be much more stronger than just a single one. For any of you woodworkers out there who've ever had to use a 2x4, if you stand on a 2x4 in and of itself, if you put 2 2x4s together, it's a little more sturdy. Same thing here. If you can use more than one strap, use more than one strap. Stand off to the side of the door. And again, depending on where you are or what you are in control of as far as doing alterations to doors and windows, there are plenty of things that are available commercially to secure doors. Defend. Avoid, deny, and defend. This is it. This is the last stand. This is when you have no more options. This is when you've tried to avoid, you've tried to defend. You've tried to deny them from making you a victim. You have the right to protect yourself. If you cannot avoid or deny, be prepared to defend yourself and others. Be aggressive. I know maybe that's not some of our nature, but if you have ever been truly afraid, that aggression will come out. Turn that fear into aggression. This is someone who's trying to take your life and they have no right to do so. That would make me extremely angry and does. To think about all these situations that have happened and that these people have taken their problems and what's going on in their life and they're trying to make some type of very selfish statement or act. This is about survival. Do not fight failure. Defend and fight. I'm going to simply look at this photo right here. Right? There's a distraction technique. They throw something at his head, whatever it might be, just like that woman with the purse. It was a distraction technique for that person to go back through his process. And I could go into this thing called the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. It's what fighter pilots use when they see a threat. They observe it, they orient themselves to it, they decide what they're going to do, and they act. By the very nature of using a distraction, you make that person go through that whole thing again. Okay, so they have to, if they have a target, if you distract them, they're going to be distracted by that. It's again, those precious couple of seconds where you're going to be able to do something, or somebody else is going to be able to do something. grab the firearm. Positioning yourself by a door. If you're unable to secure a door, and if you are the person in there who is physically fit and ready to fight, you position yourself close to the door, because what's the first thing that's going to come through that threshold is probably the firearm or the whatever tool that they might be using. It's going to give you an opportunity to grab it, right? And if you've ever done any of these exercises, you can hold something out here. It's easy for someone to try to take it away from you because you have no strength here. And that's how they're going to come through. Especially with a long gun, the barrel of that gun is going to come through the door. You're going to be able to grab it and push it upward. And while you're doing that, there should be 3 other people helping you with that, or 4 or 5. And then there should be other people coming in to take out his legs, to control his arms, to strike him in the head with something heavy, using blunt force to disable him. The reality of trying to survive in a situation like this, it is not going to be pretty. There's no rules in this fight. You're in the fight for your life. You're in the fight for your life not only for you, but for the people you work with and your friends and family. Shift your emotions, like I said. Shift your emotions to that anger, to get yourself into that condition red when you are prepared to fight. Understand the gravity of the situation when dealing with a determined person who's determined on killing you and others. Have that combat mindset. We all have it. It's that instinctual. If you ever get really, really, really angry and you say to yourself, oh, well, this is it. Grab the gun, run from the knife. A very simple rule. If you're able to grab the gun, grab the gun. If someone has a knife, you can try to grab it, but you might get cut. What's the better option here? Creating a little bit of distance. Start throwing objects at him to disable him. Okay? We have this gentleman here. Again, we are back in that store in Paris. He's on his phone. The shots have rung out. You can see everybody else running. What does he do? He's grabbing a makeshift weapon. Everybody knows how heavy that bottom of that bottle of wine is. He may not be successful, but it's better than what this woman has decided to do. That's that hope and hide strategy, or pretend that she's dead. I would try to find another exit. I would rather be that guy with a bottle of wine. Lieutenant Brian Murphy, he was the first responding officer to the Sikh shooting in Minneapolis many years ago. When he first showed up, he was shot numerous times. One going in his jaw and coming out. He was shot 15 times. He's still here. He's still kept in the fight because he had this mindset. So it's not just physical, it's that mindset that keeps you going. Look at what some of our military does when they're in training. They go beyond what their body is capable of doing because they have a mindset to do it and to complete the task and complete the mission. What would you do right now if something similar to what we've been talking about happens right now, or if you're sitting in your office later? Script it. Go through it. What would you do? What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I smelling? Go through change the scenario a little bit. First I heard something over here, now I hear something over here. What am I going to do differently? Am I running? Am I avoiding? Am I defending? Am I going to avoid, deny, or defend? There's a little schematic. Attack starts. Can you get to the primary exits easily enough? Yes, avoid. In a situation, I always talk about people would have a tendency to run to their vehicles. I personally wouldn't run to my vehicle. I would just run. I would run just to get away from it. Well, I can. But I'm saying if you don't run to your vehicle, because multi-prong attack, we learned that in Columbine, where there was explosive devices in the parking lot. And what if that person suddenly decides to focus his attention on the parking lot while you're trying to leave? I'm just running. Primary exits, avoid. You don't have primary exits, you need to deny them from making you a victim or a target. Try other exits. If there's other exits available to you, like I said, this is fluid and dynamic. If initially you don't have an exit to get out, deny. Hold tight in that room, lock that door, shut those lights off. If you gather more information and you're able to move to another exit, do so. And if you're not, then you need to defend yourself. What you do matters. It matters for you, it matters for the people that you're with, and it matters for your family. What you do matters, and we'll talk a little bit about this, is the Virginia Tech tragedy. 32 killed, 17 wounded, 6 wounded escaping through windows. Initial call, 2 students were killed on a dormitory on campus. Now, so there was already a large police presence there before he went to Norris Hall. Okay, so he had learned about police response, so he chained the doors. Like I said, anytime there's an active attack event, we learn from it in the law enforcement community. This was the one that showed us that we needed to carry some type of breaching tools, whether it was something to cut a chain or some type of pry bar, or if you're familiar with what a halligan is, or halligan, I always forget how to, it's what the firemen use to pry doors open. 2007, April 16th, Virginia Tech, there's Norris Hall. There's a hallway that looks very similar to some of the hallways that we have here. So what this subject did, after killing those 2 people in the dormitory, he went to this section of classrooms. Just let me get all the information up here. So he started in room 206. He walked in and just started firing. As you can see, we have red blocks, and we have yellow blocks, and we have green blocks. Green blocks are survivors, yellow are wounded, red is killed. So he walked in and started firing into 6. Then he proceeded into the room that... So then he went into room 211 and into room 207. Everybody in room 211 did not, well, there was several wounded, but most did not survive. We have these, room 204, and I'll explain a little bit more about this. So, red and yellow, killed and wounded. Mostly red to yellow, green. A mix. All green here, and we have these green right here. So I'll talk about this right here. This is the opportunity for deny and defend. What we had right here is that there were a lot of students that these were inward opening doors, or inward opening door. The students laid down in front of the door at the base. So if you have, depending on who the students are, if you have larger people that can get down in front of the door, it doesn't sound like a great thing to do, but getting shot doesn't sound like a great thing that anybody wants to do. Now, did he fire through the door? He absolutely did, but he did not strike anybody. He could not get the door open because there was enough people in front of that door to prevent him from doing so. Okay? So they used their bodies to barricade that door. Here, that square represents a professor that had been a Holocaust survivor, had been through some critical incidents and some stressful situations, okay, based on his experience. What did he do? Barricaded the door by himself, instructed his students to break the windows, and they got out. So he sacrificed himself. What he did mattered to the lives of these students. He put himself in the way. Okay? These students completely denied entrance into that room and saved all these people. We have Christina Anderson that was in this room. And unfortunately, a majority of these students in the red, they weren't able to react, or they were not prepared prior to. I have no idea the specifics of who decided to barricade themselves or to use their bodies to barricade this door, but it was somebody who had the time to think about it or had thought about it previously. Again, that mental preparation and scripting. And then we have the experience of that professor, which he was able to deny that person from access into the room. So we get into some of your roles that you might have should you find yourself in this situation. When police first respond, they are responding to the sound of gunfire. They are not there to provide medical attention. As cruel as that sounds, they are trying to stop people's lives from being ended. They are trying to stop the killing. So, what can you do as someone who's inside if you have any type of medical training? Well, you really don't need some of this medical training. Think about if there's a fire hose, or if there's a garden hose on the floor and it's leaking out water, what can you do to stop it? You can step on it. You can put some type of pressure on it. The same thing happens when someone is bleeding out. If people need help, you can help them out. Whether you step on their arm, again, pressure points, we're actually going to have a Stop the Bleed class. It's something that I recommend that everybody attend. Or if you have any experience with tourniquets, I have a tourniquet that I keep in my truck, just in case I come upon something or I need one. Right? It's all about that self-help initially, what we talked about, the oxygen mask. I can't help anybody else if I'm not able to help them. This is obviously the Boston Marathon bombing. Again, use of tourniquets, widespread there. The thoughts about tourniquets have changed over the years since World War II and Vietnam.
What is it?
So a tourniquet is I should have probably brought one out. It's, if somebody's bleeding, it's basically any type of belt or wrap, like we have, they make them, they produce them commercially, where you put it around your leg or your arm, and you just tighten it so you can close off those vessels or those arteries to stop somebody from bleeding. Okay? And if you want, I have it locked up in the room right now, but I can show you what it is. But you can just look it up and you can see what a tourniquet is and how to use it. Or I would recommend that you go to one of the Stop the Bleeding classes, which they'll be talking about. If you can't use a tourniquet, you use pressure points. If I'm bleeding here, I can find my artery right here in my arm, and I sit there and I squeeze it to stop that bleeding. If you don't have it right, just keep moving your hand around and apply that pressure. You know, we all seen those movies of like apply pressure, apply pressure. Apply pressure could stop somebody from bleeding out. Seek additional training. And then stopthebleed.org, and again, I would go to the NECC Public Safety site on Facebook to get more information on that Stop the Bleed class that we have coming up. Improve survival. If you see something, do something. So this is, again, this is a little character of what a tourniquet looks like. There's the actual band that goes around it, and then there's a windlass, or there's that little crank that tightens it up, that closes that tourniquet up, which applies that pressure to the arm. And then you can lock it in, so you don't have to sit there and just, because our hands will get tired after a while if you keep trying to apply direct pressure. Use belts, use computer cords, like you can fasten a tourniquet out of just about anything. As long as it's going to do the job, I don't care if it looks pretty. I don't care if somebody hands you a t-shirt and you tie that around there and you tie it as much as you possibly can. Then you grab, I don't know, the base of this flag, one of the poles, and you put it in there and you just keep twisting it around to tighten it up to stop the bleeding. Use what's around you. So again, this is from Stop the Bleed. Just some more examples: direct pressure, and then applying a tourniquet. And there's just certain procedures that you need to follow when you apply the tourniquet. It's usually 2 inches above the wound. Okay? But for any type of extremity, the higher you go, the better. Right? My femoral artery's right here. If I'm bleeding out down there, I'm going to put it up even higher on my leg. Right? So the higher, the better. And once you put it on, crank it down. I don't care if the person's saying it's too tight, it's this and that. Keep it on there. Do not take it off. Because once you put that on there, all the blood that's not flowing back through the heart and getting filtered through is going to start to become filled with bacteria. And as soon as you release that tourniquet, depending on the time, all that bacteria will now start going through the body and then go septic. Law enforcement focus: stop the killing, stop the dying. And once that is done, they will start to evacuate the injured if they're able to do so. So, you've survived this active attack event. Or even I could use this in a situation, in a swatting situation. Everybody familiar with what swatting is? It's when somebody from a different part of the world or a different part of the country calls the local police department and says that there is something happening here, and you're in the middle of it, and suddenly there's a huge police response, right? Because we think there's something going on here. So if you are involved in any type of these situations, follow the commands of the police. Do not run up to the officers. Do not run up to them and say, so-and-so's down, this and that. They're hyper-focused on stopping the killing and the dying. Follow the commands, show your palms, show your hands, right? That's the most important thing when we go through any type of law enforcement training, especially when it's a deadly force situation. We always tell our officers to look at the hands. Hands in the waistband, because that's what's going to have the instrument that can kill you and can operate that instrument to kill you. Okay? Look at the hands. So when you approach them, keep your hands up and follow commands. And again, if you are involved in any of these situations, it is usually in an institution like this, they will provide any type of critical incident management or stress plan post the incident. If not, if you're involved in one of these situations, seek help to get you through this. So if you're experiencing any type of post-traumatic stress or anything related to the incident, you want to get help as soon as possible to help you through it and help you process it. We don't name any of the people that are involved in this shooting. Typically, the media has been very good about doing this. But with the situation that occurred in Maine, because he was so active and out there, they identified him and they named him because they wanted to get the information out. They wanted more eyes looking for this person. So that's why he was named. Angela McQueen. These are some of the examples of the heroes that you don't hear about, that she was the PE teacher at a middle school, and some kid came into the cafeteria with a pistol. What did she do? When she saw it, she immediately ran up to it and grabbed control of it. Her and a student resource officer were able to wrestle the pistol away from this person before he had an opportunity to harm anyone. Again, going through that denial phase, that deliberation phase, and seeing it and acting on it, taking that decisive action and what to do. Victoria Soto from Sandy Hook shielded her students. Not left with a lot of options there, but still cared for her students, bravely defended them. These are the people that we remember during this program and this process. Jesse Lewis, 6 years old. What did he do? When he was presented with an opportunity, he knew something about firearms, whether it was from his dad or was from playing video games or whatever. He knew when the person was reloading. And when that person was reloading, he saw his fellow students cowering in the corner and he yelled at them to run. And they did. They survived. Unfortunately, Jesse did not. His actions saved the life of others. What you do matters. What they did matters. Again, so the two books that are related to this topic is The Gift of Fear and The Unthinkable. This one again talks about the denial phase, the deliberation phase, and that decisive moment. This one talks about how we respond and how we have that primal instinct that fear helps us in certain situations. That if something doesn't feel right, you kind of act upon that feeling. A lot of time we deny that something is wrong, and this book really covers it. It's great. Teddy Roosevelt, any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. As long as you're doing something, don't just sit there and hope that it's not going to happen to you. Do something. Do something. Your safety, you are responsible for your safety until the police arrive or somebody that's going to help you get through this critical incident. Just a brief video, and this will conclude the presentation.
Hi, can I get you started with drinks?
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta take this.
We'll need a minute.
Seriously, no, I'm here. Stop.
Man, you need to back up. You can't be here anymore. Get out of my face, what, man. You think I'm afraid of you? Get off, man. 911, there's a clip.
is he? By the bar, blue jeans, black shirt. Empty hands up, follow their instructions.
I'm in the direct line of fire if I head for either exit, but I have other options to help me survive. Guys, come on, in here. Come on. Go, go, go. Lock and barricade the door.
Both my exits are blocked by the shooter. I gotta stay hidden. I'm no victim. I'm ready for this.
He's applying direct pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding until we can find a tourniquet. In the meantime, turn off your phones and make a plan to defend yourself.
We have to fight to survive. If you control the weapon, you control the shooter. I'll go for the gun. He'll go for his arms. The bartender will go for the head.
Where is he?
We got him right here. Stay
Please,
down.
show me your hands.
Over here.
You can survive a mass shooting if you're prepared. Remember, run, hide, or fight. Run. Wherever you go, be aware of alternate exits. Quickly and cautiously evacuate in a direction away from the attacker. Don't hesitate. Seconds matter. Remember windows and emergency exits. Leave belongings behind. Keep your empty hands raised and clearly visible when exiting a building. Follow all instructions from the police. Don't stop until you're sure you've reached a safe location. Hide. If there is no safe escape route, find a good hiding place. Lock and barricade the door. Silence cell phones. Prepare a defense plan. Fight. Fight only as a last resort. Use available objects as improvised weapons. Use teamwork and surprise. A coordinated ambush can incapacitate an attacker. You're fighting for your life. Don't fight fair. Stop the bleed. A victim can die of uncontrolled blood loss in 5 minutes or less. Apply pressure or a tourniquet to control severe bleeding. Go to fbi.gov/survive to learn more.
So, just to kind of reiterate, if you do find yourself involved in one of these active attackers or this critical incident, avoid, deny, defend, run, hide, fight, whatever words you want to use. Prepare yourself mentally prior to, no matter where you are. If you're just walking in a restaurant, take 2 seconds to look around and see what some alternative exits are. If you find yourself in a movie theater, same thing. You don't have to walk around hyper-vigilant, but just to have that little bit of information can be what can save your life, or the life of people that you're with, your friends and family. Some other things to remember: if you are put in a situation where you cannot avoid, you may have to, again, lock doors. Why are we locking doors? Because the attacker is hyper-focused on victims, and if we can lock that door, or if we can barricade it, we're giving ourselves some precious seconds and or minutes waiting for that police response. You're ultimately responsible for your own safety. What you do matters. And then if we're put in a situation where you have no other alternatives but to fight, that's what you're going to do, and you don't fight fair, right? Just like the gentleman said in the video, if you control the gun, you control the shooter. And hopefully there's people around you of the same mindset that are seeing you act, and as you control the firearm, or they do, you are doing everything you can to help him out. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or I'll be here so you can ask me. And if I don't know the answer, I will definitely do my best to find out, or try to find, no, I don't want you, or try to find the answer for you. So I thank you for your attendance here. You've been a great audience. And again, if there's anything I can ever do, or any questions that you may have, or I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you. And I would also say all this information is available. All you have to do is look up active shooter. You will find several training videos on YouTube. You will find other colleges or universities that actually have videos for their institution, which we're kind of still working on things there at Northern Essex, but we are moving forward in the proper direction. Very welcome. I hope if you can't take it all away, take at least one thing away that will help you.